light behind me, the white one. I don't know
No,
if
you're
that's
good.
No,
That's
you're
your ambiance.
yeah. I had to pull down
And we
my
are live,
social media.
by the way.
And welcome back to the Smoke Pit. My name is Katie Torback. I am the president of 5051 Veterans. And today we are welcoming Justin Dews, who is running for Senate in North Carolina. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Like I said, my name's Katie. I'm an Army vet, and I live in Jacksonville, Florida. Rory?
Hi, Rory, 5051 Vets Comms Director. North Carolina, also, I am not a constituent, or I'm bad with words. You know what I'm trying to say, of Justin, but I'm semi-local to him. So
Constituent is what you
there
were going with. Yeah, I got
Justin,
you.
introduce yourself. Give us your elevator pitch.
Yeah, sure. Justin Dews, Marine Corps veteran, obviously running for the U.S. Senate here in North Carolina. Bottom line is, we need working class representation, veteran representation in the halls of Congress, because it's become such a corrupt mess that you can't really trust either side. So we've got some foundational cracks to really address, and hopefully reorient our compass to some to a more perfect union. Right? We've got a lot of areas from healthcare, education, living wages, you name it, right? Anti-corruption reform. There's lots of stuff that needs to be done. So that's what's pulled me into office, or into running for office, wanting to help.
And all of that shit is important, right? Everything that you listed. So let's start out like getting to know you. So like, where'd you grow up? What shaped your worldview, and what made you join the Marines?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So grew up in Midwestern Ohio, a little small farm town called Salina. Population probably is like, I don't know, 9,000-10,000. Spent a lot of time on my grandma's dairy farm. My mom passed away when I was 5. And my dad was a welder. So I started working at a young age. That's hopefully where I think I developed my work ethic. And so I was in high school when 9/11 happened. And I think that was one of the last times I've really seen the country come together. And that was what I think planted a seed of wanting to like serve and help others. And that led me to the Marine Corps. I joined shortly after graduating high school in 2003. Spent about just a hair under 10 years active duty. Was in the infantry as an 03, and I loved my service, but I almost stayed, but I had a couple kids while I was active duty, and I was starting to miss some birthdays and Christmases and all this stuff. And after the childhood I had, I wanted to be there for my kids as they grew up, and so went back to Ohio in 2012. Worked for my dad for a bit, for help run his business, and then came down to North Carolina in 2015. Kind of joined the corporate world from there. Finished grad school while I was down here, and about 2017 I started having this inkling of, okay, I was thinking about running for office. I didn't know how to kind of get started. And so I was just kind of asking around, and, one thing led to another. And I just started to really feel like, okay, I'm an advocate for some pretty bold change. I think some of the stuff that got me first activated in 2016 was Bernie's campaign for like things like universal health care. And so I just over time became more and more active, and then said, okay, if like I like I said, I felt like it was the best way for me to try to help was to run for office and try to have a positive impact. And, the Marine Corps taught, try to teaches you to leave a place better than you found it. And as we were talking earlier, Congress, it really is fucked up. I mean, they in no way, shape, or form represent the will of the people. They're, in my opinion, a bunch of most of them are a bunch of sold out career politicians, and don't have no recollection of what it is to live paycheck to paycheck, or worry about having to put food on the table. And it's just that infuriates me. Is there's two different Americas, right? There's a lot of people see, it's not, to me, it's not left and right. It is top and bottom, right? You've got people that are well off and are really driving the economy. And then you have this vast majority of the working class and the poor who are just scraping by. And that is not, that's not the American dream. I can work. I'm okay with working hard. Like, I've had 2 full-time jobs on top of each other for almost 8 years. And now I've lost both of them because I've run for office, which is interesting. But that's not what the American dream was. And like, my wife works full time. Our oldest son works full time and contributes. So it's just, and if we're struggling, clearly I know others are. And just, so this just like the path we're on is not sustainable. So that was a really long answer to my background, Katie.
It's okay. Because we just want to get to know you, right? And so, as I was doing some research into you, did you start a business at some point?
Yeah.
I
hope. Sure. I feel like a little bit of entrepreneurship's in my blood. Like I said, grandparents' dairy farm. My dad started his own business. My brother owns his own. I worked for the university helping folks start some of their own. I started I launched a medical device company because I was fed up when I messed up my L4, L5 in the Marine Corps, some knee injuries. They tell you pain is weakness leaving the body, right? That's for sure. And when I first got out, like, all they wanted to do was just, hey, here's some opioids, painkillers. And I'm like listening to the what's going on in the civilian world, which is, all of this addiction, and deaths, from opioids. And I'm like, this is what the VA is handing out. And so I tried to create a medical device. I did. I found a team of engineers at NC State to join me. We used this technology called thermal electrics. And we got to work in prototypes. And I'm just not really a big risk taker. And so, similar to like why I don't want to ask people to donate, I didn't want to ask people to give up maybe their life savings to invest in this. But I was trying to create a device, the thermal electrics, heat and cool, and then you use the wearable components like fabrics to do the compression piece. And it's just really like a mobile pain therapeutic, right? You can heat, cool, and compress on the go, and as an alternative to taking a pill, right? And again, that opened my eyes to, okay, well, as I was going through the process, like, investors don't care about your positive mission. They don't care that you want to help people avoid addiction. They care about, okay, well, what do your profits look like in year 3? What is your margins in year 5? Like, what is your plan to exit? And I'm just like, it's just, again, frustrating. Like, you want to do something positive, but the whole system is built on profit incentives, the whole medical industry. And it's just, similar to running for office. Like I ran for the U.S. House last cycle. That opened my eyes. Starting a company opened my eyes. And again, but I believe entrepreneurship is a way for people to share their gifts with the world. I don't regret it, and I'll probably go back to it at one point in my life. But that was kind of one of the goals I was chasing, with positive impact there through entrepreneurship and the medical device. But I kind of see running for office now as probably a better way to impact more people, through things like we talked about, like universal health care and, immigration reform. I'm very anti war now. My service is really pulled me in the opposite direction. Not that I'm not proud of it and think that there's amazing things that come from, serving your country. But I do think that as a human species, we need to start trying to evolve past tribalism and conflict and, just endless war. So, because I've got 4 kids of my own. They're all basic. The oldest is 23, the youngest is 16. Like, I mean, if something pops off, and they try to draft, I mean, I'm not going to be willing to ship my children off to fight a war they know nothing about. There's a reason why can you join the military at 17 with your parents' signature, but you can't run for Congress for the U.S. House till you're 25. You can't run for the U.S. Senate till you're 30. You can't run for president till you're 35. So they clearly understand there's a mental maturity that happens along that track. And so, over time, I've gotten less and less, just because I've seen so much crap hidden behind that pretext of supporting the troops, right? You guys know the money didn't go to us; it went to contractors and defense manufacturers and things like that. So, I hate that stuff. Some of the best people I ever knew didn't get to come home and start a family and impact their communities, right? So, not to go all sour here. So,
Yeah, but I mean, it resonates within our community, right? Everything you just said, especially when it comes, because we started talking about your business, of which it's such an interesting concept, right? Of the opioid crisis within our community, and then veterans trying to better veterans, veterans taking care of veterans, and then not getting the funding because it's not profitable, right? And
yeah,
and then on top of that, you have a government that uses us as props, and then when we ask for help, they turn their backs on us. But that's been the generational thing, right? With veterans, it's nothing new. We're used to it by this point.
no, you're right.
Yeah. I'm a small business owner as well. I mean, I have a day job as well. But I do own a small business. So what do you think that politicians most misunderstand about small businesses?
The fact that they purely drive the economy. I looked this up as I was writing an article. I hope I don't misrepresent the percentage. I know it's in the 90s. I do think it is 98% of companies in the U.S. have less than 20 employees, right? And so, but everything in the news is about these big corporations and all of the government grants and contracts that they're able to get. So I would say that most politicians, they're looking at the wrong people, right? Like, why lure Amazon here when they're going to fully automate and get rid of 600,000 corporate jobs, right? Like, I just don't think that is a sustainable path. They've been raising the taxes on the residents, and putting the burden on consumers. Like, North Carolina's got one of the lowest corporate tax rates in the U.S. It's 2.25% right now, and there's a law that drops it down to 0% by 2032, I believe. And so we've seen this shift of taxes and come on to small business owners, and to like the employees, right? So I wish that they knew how things like universal healthcare would help a small business, because there's so many people that won't leave a corporate job because of the benefits, even though they much prefer working for a small company. What else don't they understand? It's that they're the heart of communities, right? And so, clearly North Carolina's experience, with the cotton mills and things like that, and Detroit's seen it with their manufacturing, right? Like, if you go all in on one industry and then the economy changes in 30 years, right? Like, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So I'd much rather see Congress concentrate on sustainable small businesses and incentivizing them versus, giving a $200 million tax abatement for Eli Lilly to build a manufacturing site a couple miles down the road, that again is going to be highly automated. So yeah, they're just, I would, I think there's very few politicians that have probably owned or ran a business. And so just, it's not easy, right? Just to get to break even, right? It can be, challenging. And so I'd like to see the odds stacked less against small businesses. And where, yeah.
Well, I mean, one of your central platforms is monopolies, and breaking up monopolies. And I own a small plumbing company. And I did some research into other businesses around my area, like our competition, and it was something like 14 out of 20 of the other small businesses listed in the area were owned by a larger conglomerate.
Yeah. I think that's, we've been in this, I think, cycle of seeking more and more profits and consolidation, merger, acquisition, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm again, both running for office and researching all these policies. Like, we've gone through this stuff before, right? In the 20s and the 30s, when we had to do trust busting after the Great Depression and break up the big banks and big oil, and then we'll pass regulation, and then decades pass, and then it gets watered down and repealed. And so it's like, well, we need to take it to a step further, right? Find a way to make this stuff, if it requires a constitutional amendment for certain things, right? Whether it's, certain minimum tax rates, or, the prevention of loopholes, or all this stuff. It's become a game. I've been calling it the United Corporations of America, because I really think that's what's driving the country is corporate interest and greed.
You can see it. You can see it in state houses across the country. Florida is in legislative session right now, and it's been atrocious. I was watching the Alabama state session today, and they passed a bill that nobody asked for. Like nobody in that state asked for at all. And so, yeah, like I have a big problem with big monopolies as well. And something that you said kind of caught my interest, and you said regulations. So, do you think government regulation helps or hurts innovation?
Um, I think it depends. It depends how it's used, right? Not every regulation is created equal. I think when it's regulation used to prevent risk, I think it's good. I think it can be used, as it has, Glass-Steagall, Dodd-Frank, right? That's like forcing, the finance industry to decide to, okay, are we going to do small mom and pop? Like, hey, we can take your deposits, or are we going to be investment banks and gamble? And in the past, we've separated those, but now that, again, that's been repealed and watered down so much that there's all this risk taking now, and we've seen collapses from, '08 and the insurance crisis and all that stuff, COVID. Uh, Again, we're not on a sustainable economic path, and so I've been reading a lot of the founding documents and refreshing myself with it, and it's just like, you don't find the word capitalism in there, right? And yet so much of our government and economic system is driven purely off of this desire for profit, and so again, it's saying, okay, we can still be a capitalist country, but using regulation to say we're not going to let the top tech companies have $400 billion in profits while we've got homeless veterans and hungry children and shutting down rural hospitals, right? Like, that is just not that's not moral. That's not a just country, in my opinion. Um, so
I think it's a corrupt one, right? And you often say that the system is broken. So do you believe that it's fundamentally corrupt or just flawed?
I think it is. I think it's deeply flawed right now, especially with Citizens United and all this dark money that's in there, the use of gerrymandering by both parties, lack of term limits, use of gerrymandering, and dark money, right? You can unfuck the system and take out the corruption if you deal with those things. And so are we at this, a point, beyond repair? No, but we are, I fear, dangerously close. And again, it is this sort of, I think America goes through these cycles of, whether it's the Civil War, women's suffrage, civil rights, and I would say now, protests in the streets and things, so much civil unrest. America gets to these inflection points, and typically we come out better on the opposite side. But I've never had in my life to fear like that there'd be a president who wouldn't, step down from office or concede an election once when the vote totals came in, right? Like, so all of this sowing distrust in the system, there are threats to democracy that I don't think we've necessarily seen before, at least in my lifetime. And so, yeah, it is corrupt. It's corrupt as shit right now, because the more money you raise, the higher the office you can get. And then, in my opinion, the more beholden you are to those donors. And so that makes it for people like me to run for office, or anyone from the working class. because you don't have the money to run ads and, billboards and signs and social media teams and volunteers to, canvas and all that stuff, right? Like, and I've seen it, I do even here in North Carolina, right? Like there's 7 candidates for the U.S. Senate, but the state party, they've already picked their favorite, right? They're not going to wait to the primary. They've got Roy Cooper, who's a former governor. I understand he's the heavyweight, but they're choosing to put their support behind him before the primary, which to me is sort of unethical, right? Like, why don't you let the voters decide? Then you throw your support behind. Like I even asked the state party to, hey, are you planning on holding any type of events, a meet and greet, a town hall, a debate? Introduce the 3 million unaffiliated and the 2.3 million Democratic voters, and even the 2.3 million Republicans in the state to no effort. They basically, failed, basically told me to F off. And again, this is one of the things that's like, man, even the national parties, like they're picking and choosing their favorites and who they want to fund. And so again, the less, like, the more anti-establishment or outside the box or, anti-status quo you are, the less you're going to get embraced, because either party doesn't want that, right? They want people that are just going to toe the line and say the party message, and that's not me. So, yeah, it's a shame that the system's become very corrupt.
It has. And you mentioned Citizens United, and I don't know if you know this, but we are partners with Money Out of Politics. And we hope that you take the Money Out of Politics pledge. Because
100%.
we also believe that money in politics is one of the largest problems that we're facing, that our voices have been diluted by corporate money. And I will agree with you on races and money distribution on both sides of the aisle, of how they pick and choose who establishment candidates are going to be, right? And I find it unethical on multiple levels that people choose people before primaries, right? And
Yeah, you're right. And things like closed primaries, there's in North Carolina, this blew my mind. There's 40% of the state is unaffiliated, registered unaffiliated, right? And exactly, like 30%, like 30.3% is registered Republican, and the 30.3% registered Democrat. So it's insane that there's this huge part of middle America, independent, unaffiliated, call them what you want, just, completely disenfranchised. I get why some might choose that. But they don't have candidates that are talking to them, that aren't, again, both parties have gone so far left and so far right that there's nobody really in the middle anymore. And trying to come up with just compromises and solutions instead of obstructions. So something, again, the Marine Corps, I think, taught me is 70% solution now is better than 100% solution ever. But we don't have a Congress now that can agree on anything. So they'd rather just obstruct and sit on their hands and try to make the other team look bad and make their team look good. I'm like, that's not the point of this. People, like, you're there to try to make this a more perfect union, but they're treating this like team sports. And I'm like, no, you've got a higher moral or ethical responsibility here to do again, what I think is the responsibility to the greater good, right? But because there's very little ethical oversight or regulation, in the halls of Congress. It's become, what do they call it? A swamp, a cesspool of corruption.
Yeah, it has. Unfortunately, it's both sides of the aisle, and it's been a extremely long time. And I am a firm believer that we can change it in our generation.
We can.
Yep, because I believe we are about the same age. Because you said you graduated high school in 03, I graduated in 05. So we're not too far apart. So let's talk about your actual platform, because that's what I want to chat with you about. So affordability is a central focus of your platform, and affordability across the country right now is in dire straits. I always talk to people about this. I work in construction, and like my day job, like I work for a very large commercial firm, and I make very good money. And I will say this, I make more now than my mom made when I was a kid. Right. So like, I feel like I made it in life, right? Like, because your parents always want you to do better than they do.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I've made it. I've made it. And I can't afford shit. And I make really good money. And so I was talking to a tradesman, right? I started in the trades, now I work in management. And he's in his 20s, Republican, MAGA, and said to me, he said, Kate, I don't really care what bathroom they use at this point. I just want to be able to buy a house. And he's 22 and he makes like 70,000 a year and can't afford a house, right? And so when we talk about affordability, right, it's a talking point on both sides of the aisle, especially with young conservative men. It is a large talking point right now. So one of the things you said is you want to raise minimum wage, and I will let you explain to what I know the amount, and how do you plan on making that happen?
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. Let me first parse a little bit out, which is the fact that you said part of what made you feel like you made it was like, okay, where am I compared to my parents' generation, right? Like same thing. I grew up seeing this natural progression. Okay, the previous generations had a certain quality of living. Well, typically the next generation has a slightly higher standard of living, right? That for the first time in my life is completely flipped on its head. The fact that people have to have multiple jobs, and we had to come up with a whole new word for a gig economy and side hustles.
Hustle.
That wasn't. That was for people to just be able to, again, pay the bills or maybe have some spending money, and so there's, if minimum wage would have kept pace with productivity gains since the 70s, minimum wage would have been a little over $18 in 2015. Okay, and that's peer-reviewed research. Again, that's on my website. So my goal is to try to get us to $30 an hour by 2030. And at first, I agree, it does sound outlandish. But when you step back and you see, okay, the average worker works 2,000 hours a year, $30 an hour, 60 grand a year before taxes. It's probably closer to 45, 50 after taxes. That's a living wage, right? That's not ludicrous. And so my first job, I think, working for my dad at his, at 13 under the table was like $250 an hour. My 18-year-old daughter who just graduated high school is doing it, started a tipped waitress job at $2.13. Right? That's legal tipped minimum wage, $2.13 an hour, plus their tips. And I'm like, not to mention that the federal minimum wage is $7.25 and hasn't been adjusted since the early 90s. So yeah, there's lots and lots of out of whack of affordability. So and again, as a small business owner, I can see how that's going to scare a lot of small business owners who might be struggling to pay a $15 wage to their employee. How the hell am I going to afford $30 an hour for 5, 7, 10? And again, I've tried to lay out the math to show by increasing the highest corporate tax rates and personal income rates to the rates we had in the 1950s through like the 1970s, we could afford to pay that sort of that delta between what maybe these small businesses are already paying and stepping them up to 30 by 2030. So but that's just really one piece of the puzzle to come of affordability. I think universal healthcare is right there with it. You got to untie healthcare to a job, and just remove the profit incentive from the industry. The rest of the developed is already there. The rest of the developed world is already there. We're like one of 9 countries that doesn't have universal healthcare, and those are countries like Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan, right? Countries we typically don't want to be associated with. And the crazy part is we're spending like 2x of what the next country is on healthcare. Yet, I think we're like somewhere like 45th in life expectancy globally. So clearly, we're not. Our healthcare system is jacked up. So I'm an advocate for a universal Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it. Maybe something similar to the VA, where it's very little out of cost pocket to us. And again, we can look at the rest of the developed world for good systems to model. So yeah, higher wages. And again, that's MIT research showing that I kind of landed on $30 an hour, but they show living wages depending on where you live, how many kids, how many working adults. I mean, some of the places it's up to $45, $50 an hour. And so, yeah, higher basic wages, healthcare that doesn't come out of your pocket, right? Like like the police, the firefighters, the public education, the paved roadways, the military, those are all services that are paid out of our tax dollars. We can do that with healthcare, right? The studies show we could actually save money by doing that. All right. And then the last piece is the home affordability piece, because that's so instrumental to, I'd say, the American working class as a way to build wealth. And I bought my first house outside of Jacksonville, North Carolina, like Camp Lejeune, a little town called Maysville. It was new construction, 2-bedroom maybe. No, maybe 3-bedroom. It was small, but it was $110,000. And that was 2000, oh gosh, 6, 7. And now, again, I think the average new home cost is around 400 some thousand. So there's a whole generation getting priced out that can't, like you said, can't afford to even consider owning a home. And that, much less having the benefit of something like the VA loan, where you don't have to have, a high down payment or something like that. So, man, affordability is, and rightfully so. I mean, I'm very much on the tax the rich side, tax the corporations who are doing so amazingly well. Like, how many times has Main Street bailed out, Wall Street, right? From, recession to recession. But when does Main Street get bailed out by Wall Street? It just doesn't happen. And so that's one of the articles I wrote was about it, how this is a recurring scam. But what gives me hope is that, throughout history, right? They don't teach it. They didn't teach me this in high school, that in the 20s, the Battle of Blair Mountain, I think it was like 10,000 coal miners took up arms against the coal company to demand. That was just to get like a 40-hour work week, safe working conditions, and things like that, like basic wages, getting, I think, children out of the workplace. And so, like, every little thing has had to be like fought for and protested and organized and just kind of repeatedly been advocated for. So I guess that's one of the things that gives me hope, is seeing all this growing advocacy, the people in the streets, that are just, okay, like, I'm not okay with status quo, right? I'm not okay with this path that we're on. I want to do something about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned we were talking about minimum wage, but then you went into, Medicare for all. So I always ask the same question of every candidate that comes on here and talks about universal health care, Medicare for all, or whatever terminology they choose to use. How is that going to work with the VA?
Yeah, I think, I actually think that some of the system could be modeled after the VA. Like, I've got, because of injuries, I've got a high enough disability rating where I don't come out of pocket, I think, for hardly anything. And so those are our tax dollars going to use. Now, I go, kind of only when I have to. And so I'm not talking about you covering every person's, elective cosmetic procedure. No, I'm talking about universal basic health care, like emergency care, like preventative care, annual care. And so I don't know that, like, I wouldn't want to, like, disrupt the veterans, healthcare system, because I'm a user of it. I actually think, like I said, you could probably, now look, the VA clearly had to go through some learning pains, on failed, like, not meeting expectations, right? Like, and so, yeah, I it's kind of a hard question, but I would say you take the best of all programs, and you try to create one that covers, basically from birth to death, and it's really there, like I said, for the preventative side and the treatment, of the worst stuff. Does that make sense?
It does, because I believe one of my concerns, right, is I believe in the VA healthcare system. We have specialized healthcare that I don't believe we can get through community care. I think that we have employed specialized healthcare within our system for a very long time for veterans. And so when people talk about universal healthcare, my worry is separating the VA system. I am an advocate. Our group is also, we believe in universal healthcare for all. It's something that we agreed on as a group. And there is a large swath of veterans currently that are not serviced at the VA. And people don't understand that. Is that there are generations of veterans that weren't in wartime, but they did serve, but they don't get their healthcare through the VA system. And
Yeah.
when we talk about universal health care, we already have an overburdened healthcare system in America. We see that, it's clearly evident. So one of the things that we suggest is encapsulate, like capture all veterans into the VA healthcare system, right? And then leave the civilians to have their healthcare system, but expand the VA healthcare system to capture every single veteran, because then it lessens the burden. Just a suggestion.
No, I just jotted that down. I actually like that because kind of what you mentioned was the specialized care on a couple fronts, right? I think you know, so I had a buddy shot in the spine and is paralyzed from the waist down, right? So you've got things on that front, you know, amputees, you know, a whole mental health side from like hazing, sexual predator sort of stuff that and harassment that goes on. So yeah, you do need a system that is understanding of exactly what veterans like those special areas that can't be just, like you said, left to some routine civilian care because they don't have any experience with it, right? So yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. You wrap all veterans, and look, I'm actually a believer of not mandatory national service but optional, right? You know, so how I think Israel has mandatory 2 years. I'm think I would like to see like an optional, and you don't have to join the military. Like it's like completely domestic. You know, you go somewhere like after a hurricane, or maybe you go there before to try to, you know, build up resilience. It could be to go build housing in an area, all sorts of reasons. So, shoot, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Can I ask some questions on that? Because
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, like let's expand on that. I find that quite an interesting topic. So where do I want
yeah, the national service piece, the optional.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting theory, just because before we started, I introduced myself to you and I said I've been in veteran advocacy for over a decade. I think the military as it sits today is flawed. We were just talking about healthcare, right? And you said a term that always just oh my God, hazing. Okay. And the reason that I'm always like, ugh, when people say hazing is it's usually used in a context. And then you said sexual assault right after. And the reason that it makes me cringe is that most people don't understand that through the VA healthcare system, men cannot claim military sexual trauma. Like they can't claim for compensation through the VA because it's classified as hazing.
That is interesting. I did not know that.
Isn't it? And I have been involved in MST advocacy for an extremely long time. And it's one of the greatest fuck yous to men that served. Because more men are sexually assaulted in the military than women. The numbers prove that. It's, on paper. And so it's not a women's issue. Like sexual assault is not a women's issue in the military. It's really a men's issue when you look at the numbers, and most perpetrators are men.
That blows my mind, to be honest. Having only served in in all male infantry units, I don't know, that blows my mind. But when I have to take into account all the other services, then the numbers start to play out but that does surprise me. I would have naturally assumed that it was, an aggressive male ego trying to harass the female. So wow, that does surprise me.
Yeah, most people don't understand that. So I'm going to ask you for some commitments that we ask from all candidates,
Sure.
right? In regards to a few things as it relates to military sexual trauma. Because I am an advocate in the space. My vice president is an advocate in the space, and we have been. Military sexual trauma is an epidemic. It's not talked about enough. Like I just told you, more men are sexually assaulted in the military than women. But women have always taken on this burden on our shoulders to try and fix this injustice within the military, right? And so now we're on the 6th generation of women that has served. We started serving in the Women Army Corps in the 1940s, but we were serving during the Civil War because we were dressing like men. So after Vanessa Guillen was brutally murdered in 2020, I don't know if you're familiar with the story on Fort Hood, but women veterans cross country were pissed. We had enough. And so we all kind of banded together across country and got some reforms put into place to try and help the next generation of soldier kind of curb sexual assault. Everything that we fought for has been undone by Pete Hegseth under the guise of DEI.
Oh, wow.
So a few of the things that we ask for from candidates is a commitment to survivors that you will at least hear us out and try and get some of those protections put back into place, whether it's through the Vanessa Guillen Act or any other form of legislation that comes before you as a senator that you will vote in the affirmative to help us fix the epidemic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, there's so much you don't know. And I've always tried to pride myself that I'm open-minded, and then when presented with, new information, or new perspectives, right, having the ability to shift and then evolve my perspective and then act on it. So yeah, no, I'm this interests me in the way, like, I want to learn more about it, so that way I can help.
It's an epidemic that people don't talk about, right? I like to say it's one of the military's best kept secrets. And one of the ways that we were able to get legislation even passed, and it wasn't its own standalone piece of legislation, it was passed in the NDAA of 2021, portions of the Vanessa Guillen Act. But women veterans only make up 15%. So even if every woman veteran spoke out on sexual assault, it wasn't enough. So what we did was activate moms and dads and get them pissed off. And so that's how we got the reforms, right? As civilians and veterans came together. And now there are no protections. And from our understanding, because we have friends that are active duty, that SHARP is no longer an identifier in the military. It's no longer a billeted job.
Wait. Say that again.
SHARP, your SHARP rep, like your SARC. I think it's a SARC in the Marines, the Sexual Assault Response Coordinator.
Okay.
It's not a billeted job.
Oh, so they completely. And how long was it a billeted like role? Or what? Like, was it an MOS or what? Help me understand here.
It was like an extra job identifier.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see.
Right,
And
like you're like the UA guy, or you're the SHARP rep, or you're EO.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? Like all of those roles.
And so they took that out under the guise of DEI, is what you're saying. Is that right?
Hmm?
Okay. Wow. I don't understand. Yeah, that's wild. So
It shouldn't be surprising though, because if you watched Secdef's speech to the generals, when he said that there would be no more closed reporting, we all knew what was coming as survivors of military sexual trauma, that this is the avenue it was going to go down. But the bigger thing is that it's not a women's issue. Like, this is a more men issue than a women issue in the military. But women speak out, like, because we're trying to be like, hey, we just probably should.
well,
Anyway.
I think from societal lens, recent right, there was the Me Too movement stuff. I would say that lent credence to, and again, I think maybe that's just that natural inclination, because the military is so male dominant, that it is a highly, almost singular female issue, when in reality, like you said, it's not. So I look, I think advocacy, when you're doing it for good reasons, like it, not that it doesn't matter, but like the advocacy matters, right? Like, so some people will latch on to it because it is, a male sort of thing that's been hidden under the carpet, and others might get activated purely because it is the 15% of women who want, and they want to be a louder proponent or advocate for them. So I think the more eyeballs we can get on an issue, the better chance you get, like you said, of uniting a coalition of people who are either so pissed off and fed up that they force the change.
Yeah, I mean, one of the bigger issues that we saw in 2020, and it's really not a 2020 issue, it's a military issue, is accountability, right? Like, you said that you were an officer, and the amount of officers that retired with full benefits, full rank, after being convicted of sexual assault is appalling.
Oh, that's another issue I didn't even know about. So no, I never, I was enlisted my whole time. I put in a MESET package. I considered, if I would have got a commission, I probably would have stayed and retired. But I know
Oh no, you would have went to the dark side and stayed?
yeah. No, there's definitely differences there. I wanted to, but
It's understandable that you wouldn't know, right? Like, being in an all-male unit, right? Because I was a 74 Delta. I was Chem Bio in the Army.
got
So,
it.
I was in a mixed unit, obviously. And so I think endemically all male units in, like, the infantry, right? Like, they're not going to hear about women's issues outside of their own unit, although one of the largest perpetrators of sexual assault in the military is CAB units, all male.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I mean, yeah, nothing surprises me though. At some point, and not to make light of it, but I mean, in the Marine Corps, like in an infantry unit, I think some people don't know when they're crossing a line, because some stuff gets so often pushed like to the edge. You know what I'm saying? And that's no way justifying it. I'm just saying, like, I think that can go into, some of people's confusion on, like, oh, right, so many radically different experiences, but that doesn't negate something that did happen just because you didn't know about it, right?
Yeah, and I think there was an interesting report done after Vanessa Guillen's murder of, like, why is sexual assault such a huge issue in the military, right? Because it was in, like, the national talking points at the time. And so there was a research study done by RAIN, and the number one issue they found why sexual assault is so prevalent is ambient sexual harassment is accepted.
this what we were just talking about, that sort of play. Oh man. Okay. Now, and they're saying that's, wait, a
Because the leap,
driver.
yeah, the leap isn't too much further, right? Is like if we accept, think of the motor pool, right? Like the motor pool is like a walking EO sexual harassment complaint, like, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, everybody knows it. It's a military thing. Like the motor pool is just kind of edgy. But if you go into the motor pool and they're making all these jokes and then like they touch somebody and nobody says something and then they touch somebody else and nobody says something, like, is it too much of a leap for an 18-year-old male to be like, well, this was acceptable?
I know, you're right. Yeah. Now your lines get blurred. You're right.
Right. And so that's
Mhm.
just, it's just one of the commitments we ask, is that as generations continue to serve, is we do have a sexual assault problem in the military that needs to be addressed through accountability, through legislation, and through protection of survivors and victims. That's all we're asking.
Oh, I think it's genius. That makes me think of why I kind of want mental health professionals in schools, because there's so much harassment, borderline, whatever you want to call it. And again, not that you need a therapist with every platoon, but maybe you need to train the senior enlisted or the officers to look for some more of those warning signs, because
I'm gonna get,
yeah.
nah, dog. Like, no. And the reason I'm gonna tell you no is because we have spent continually $23.4 million yearly, with an increase of 8% over the last 10 years, of a budget of programs of sexual harassment prevention in the military. And I remember being in the military and there was the whole fucking spiel on AFN of, don't be that guy. You were in during that time frame because we served during the, so do you remember the don't be that guy thing on AF?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we have spent millions and millions and millions in prevention, for an increase yearly in reporting. And I believe it's due to the accountability of those senior non-commissioned officers, of those officers that, I don't know if you vaguely understand like the reporting system because you are in an all male unit. So I will explain it. I am sexually assaulted. I report. I can go either closed or like disclosed, like undisclosed or disclosed, right? Closed or open reporting. And
Okay.
if I go open, it goes to my command. Okay.
Yep.
Then my commander holds that report and either decides that he is going to pass it on or not.
So it either gets investigated internally or it gets shut down internally.
Mhm.
And that's if the person who is sort of asking for help, that's if they decide that that's somebody who trusts their command, right? They're going to do it openly, right?
Yeah, because they want it investigated, they want to report it. So they go to their command and their
Okay.
commander holds that weight, right? So the problem is that, commanders are good old boy club with the senior non-commissioned officers. And I'll put it to you this way from personal experience. I was sexually assaulted in Korea when I was doing all of my work in 2027. Seven battle buddies reached out to me, all female. We were all sexually assaulted by the same person.
Jesus. Sorry.
E7, E7, we reported, stopped at command. Never went further.
And you guys had no means like going over the command's head to.
There's no recourse. So
Wow.
one of the things we did do and successfully were able to do in 2020 was take that power away from the commander and give it to a third party entity to investigate.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's kind of where I was going with the therapist in the room or in a classroom or in a platoon, having somebody who's external to it. And that's why I see you were pushing back against the saying, oh, you teach the senior enlisted or the command members, but no, they're going to sit on it in a lot of ways, so that way they don't look bad. Um,
Yeah.
that's
There's a lot
horrible.
there's a lot of problems I think that you would agree. There's problems in the military that the civilian world just doesn't understand or they just don't know exist. Because one
True.
of the other things that we always ask of candidates is do you know what the Ferris Doctrine is?
The Ferris Doctrine. No, off the top of my head.
The Ferris Doctrine is a piece of legislation that was passed in the 50s that says that we cannot sue the federal government as service members for negligence.
Hmm.
And so part of it was overturned in 2020. And so now, as veterans, we can sue the VA for medical negligence because they're negligent. And so we are trying to get the other portion overturned. And it's not just for sexual assault survivors on active duty, it's for training accident families. In 2020, we found out a lot of families whose service members die stateside in training accidents never get the full story, never get accountability of like what exactly happened. And so one of the recourses to that accountability measures is the Ferris Doctrine. If service members or their families are able to sue the federal government for negligence, I think that the military would straighten up.
Oh God, yeah. No, I think nobody's above accountability. So I had a buddy die off a Blackhawk crash off of Florida's coast. He had done like 6 combat deployments and he dies in a training accident. So that's wild. That I didn't know that they would try to either withhold benefits or but again, when there's nobody to look over your shoulder, you'll try to get away with as much as you can, right? And so, see, this is where that's where the regulation, why I'm pro regulation, because it's in that oversight capacity. It's to hold people accountable and do what like is intended, right? Because talk is cheap, actions matter.
It does. And we were talking before we started about accountability. And so we're going to go into a hot topic. We're going to start talking about controversial topics for the last hour to get your hot takes.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about immigration. Let's talk
Sure.
about things specifically. I see.
You want to just go start or?
Yeah, ICE needs to be held accountable. We would like to see accountability happen for the ICE agents that are masked. I'm not sure if you deployed, but I do know that watching federal agents in Jacksonville, where I live, jump out boy bands in tactical gear that I wore overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what society should be seeing. So, okay, so this hits close to home for several reasons. First and foremost, my wife was born in Mexico, naturalized when she was like 19. And so we've got a mixed family. And so the fact that this administration is able to literally detain people because they look Hispanic is, to me, a violation of so many things of what it means to be an American, right? You know, from due process to um, uh, just the founding principles of this country. Um, so I don't think they understand how much of America now lives in fear. Either people that are in that community, tied to the community, um, you know, there isn't. I've tried to research this pretty deeply. There's almost no legal way to immigrate into this country, right? You either need to be getting married to an American, have an employer willing to sponsor you for some sort of employment, I think, or be attending school. Um, like things like asylum, right? You have to prove that the country you're leaving is out to get you, like, and returning would get you murdered. And then to do that, like those, waiting on an asylum hearing, like takes 7, 10 years sometimes. Like the system is clearly broken. Um, the fact that I never thought that I would see, you know, um, masked militarized forces jumping out and snatching people on American streets. And it is just a blatant, I think, misuse, right? There's in my opinion, violation of like posse comitatus, right? Where you're not supposed to be, national, federalize the National Guard, right? So these states weren't even asking for it when they were doing it. The fact that like it's just absurd. The funding that they're getting, the tactics that they're using, it's so just un-American, immoral, unethical, unprofessional, and it's leaving a stain, I think, on this decade, this whatever generation, the people that are living through it, right? Because unless you're a Native American, you or somewhere in your family you immigrated here, right? And so the fact that all of a sudden a country of immigrants wants to start saying, no, we don't want immigrants anymore, just fucking blows my mind. First of all, right, the Statue of Liberty has etched on it, send us your tired, poor, hungry, huddled masses yearning to breathe free. But no, now we're like, let's build a fucking wall. And unless you're a white South African, stay the hell out. Like, that is just some of the most absurd, just, again, this is not America. America, I was taught, was a melting pot, a country built by immigrants. And I think we will continue to be that. So this bullshit of, whatever you want to call it, white nationalism, pride, or, in my opinion, I don't know if we're creeping into fascism, but it is not. It's just silly because our DNA is like 99.99% fucking similar. We're one human race sharing one planet. And so the more we keep fighting with each other and trying to say, oh, you don't look like me, or you don't pray to the same God, so let's fucking kill each other, right? Like, are we really an intelligent species if we're doing that? It makes it. I don't think so. I mean, I think we're the first generations alive that have the ability to, the technology to see, and the ability to see what's going around the world. Understand that we're sharing a planet, we're sharing resources, we're damaging our own ecosystem. Like, our generations are the first ones, in my opinion, throughout human civilization, that have the opportunity to change our path off of this tribal conflict bullshit that we've been on. And I'm worried our generations aren't going to meet the moment, and but I'm gonna fight like fucking hell to try to make it so. And because the democracy really is an experiment, and they left the ability to modify our founding document, the Constitution. And so I think we've got to have enough people to fight for these changes that we're talking about, and really try to get the country to live up to the ideals that I think we sort of expect. And so I've seen people, like one of my team leaders was from Trinidad and Tobago, or Tobago, I forget how you say it. But we would, either one of us would have given our life, a lot. So like the fact that you have to be born here to be an American, I think is some false pretense. And again, I'd like to see us shift from national pride to species pride, like human pride. Instead of spending $1 trillion on the DoD, let's spend $1 trillion on fucking NASA. Let's fucking go investigate the moons of Saturn. Let's put what I'm saying? Like we could reprioritize and spend our money on education and exploration, but we're spending it on destruction, tools of destruction, right? In my opinion. And so, yeah, the stance that we're on is, which I think is peace through strength or something. It just creates this. Well, now everyone's in a race to catch up, right? Well, rate of defense spending, right? And to me, that doesn't end well when you have this endless race to build weapons. And so things like, this. I know I'm ranting now, but a musket from 1790 is not equivalent to an assault rifle of today, or a belt-fed weapon for that matter. So I mean, America's turning 250. Like, we've got to update some shit, like that's okay. But if we continue to sit on our fucking hands and let this corruption eat away at democracy, I think the hill's only going to get climber, or steeper to climb. So, I said that wrong. So
yeah,
but I'm an internal optimist, so I do believe that it's never too late.
I believe that. So you said a few things in there that I want to ask you some follow-up questions.
Sure.
Number one, you mentioned guns, right? So I'm a 2A person. Most veterans are. Most of us own weapons after we get out. A lot of us don't, though. I have found, which I always find interesting. I know a few Army vets that don't own weapons, don't want to handle weapons, and I'm like, interesting. So how do you, like, as a Marine, right, how would you say you balance gun rights and gun safety? Like, I know common sense gun laws make sense as to a person. What's your take on gun laws in this country and how that should go?
Yeah. So growing up, I barely shot anything, maybe a 22. And so the Marine Corps was really my introduction to weapons. And I really realized it is so much more. Like, we've got this romance with weapons and just pulling the trigger, right? Like, but operating a weapon, safely, like being able to perform immediate action, disassemble, clean, reassemble, safety check. Like that's a whole nother level of weapons handling and expertise than it does just to pick something up and shoot it, right? And so, again, when I was a kid, I remember there was an assault weapons ban, and there were, a lot of actual, I think, right-wing advocates for it. And so I think potentially should be room to look at things like an assault weapons ban, but there can be an exception for folks. Again, I think that if you want to know an assault weapon, maybe you train with your local PD or sheriffs and do some weapons safety training, because the first part of the Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia, right? And so I yes, I own several weapons myself. I just think that we can do better to protect society. There's a mental health aspect into this, a training and weapon safety. But again, we make children, or we make kids get a license to operate a vehicle, which could be dangerous, operated in the wrong hands. So having people do more licensing and training, I don't necessarily think is that bad, to sort of lessen maybe the chance of a weapon getting in the wrong hands, because school shootings, like when we were kids, that was like Columbine was like just blew the mind of the nation. But now we've gotten numb to it, and that's even fucking scarier in my opinion. And so I'm trying to find this middle ground to say, look, clearly you're not going to take weapons away, but I think there needs to be this distinction between, okay, this is used for hunting or self-defense, and then there's weapons that are designed for as assault rifles, or belt-fed weapons. Some certain things shouldn't be easily available on the market, is what I'm saying. And so you put in some of those regulations, those barriers, to make the folks that really want to own it, right? They jump through the hurdles to get it. And does that solve the issue? I don't know if you can ever really solve. I think that's something we're going to struggle with as a country, is this balance between the interpretation of the Second Amendment, which in my opinion is more about the defense of the nation, right? Because at the time that was passed, there was no standing army, so they had to rely purely on militias to call upon it in the times of conflict. And so we now have an all volunteer military, so there's not really this need for a well-regulated militia. And so now the Supreme Court clearly has interpreted this as more of a right to bear personal arms. So again, it's like we're reinterpreting things, and that's okay. But again, I think with children that are still school age, we can just do better. And I don't think I've got all the answers for it, as much as I know that inaction is worse than trying something and not having the desired effect, right? Like, let's try an assault weapons ban like we've had before. And you know what? If it doesn't have the exact desired effect, well, at least we can say, that we're trying. I just, all this inaction or refusing to try stuff because, right? Things do fail. But I think the attempts are worth it. You learn from experience. You can learn from failure. You can grow from failure. So, yeah, it's an interesting. The Second Amendment thing is interesting because, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a different time. I never thought that I would be. I don't want to say that I've been persecuted, but I've lost a public and a private job because I filed to run for office, And so I don't like to see anybody's sort of rights infringed on, whether that's the ability to be politically active, speech, the right to bear arms. But again, I think we just need to we need to understand the moment that we're in and act accordingly. But it's I think the Second Amendment issue is it only gets brought up when there's a mass shooting, and then everyone's like, well, you can't really talk about it then, or it's so volatile. So I'm just like, no, you can still try things in the interim, right? And yeah, so that's kind of where I am. It's like, let's try things to improve the safety of the nation, the safety of the schools, restricting the ability to assault sort of weapons. But if you do want to, like, there's a pathway to licensure and ownership, through training with local PD, blah, 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 right? Like, so these problems are all solvable, and
Absolutely.
I think a lot of the time politics tries to say, well, like, it's either this way or it's that way. It's right or wrong. It's binary. But in my opinion, no, that's a lack of fucking creative thinking. And so finding middle solutions or middle grounds or compromises, that's kind of what I'm going to try to bring to this shit is like, like, get out of your fucking box that you're used to thinking of it, and like I said, try to see it from different perspective, take in new information, and again, like, I used to respect Congress, but I really don't at this point, like, because they do nothing for the benefit of the mass majority of America, and it's a fucking downright shame, and what I would like to change is just to see a system that's more responsive to what people want. And so at a time, a couple decades of going through mass shootings, it's just been a bunch of, probably mostly inaction and what do they call that shit? Soapboxing and virtue signaling and very little action. And it's like, that bothers me. Is that people will use this as an issue to fundraise instead of as an issue to try to save lives, so again, if you can get enough of the right people in the room, I think you can come up with good, middle of the road solutions. But like I said, I think you've just got Congress now, which is like, oh, if I don't do exactly what my team tells me to, well, then I'm not going to get reelected, and my donors might get mad. And it's like, well, what the fuck are you there for? Like, you spineless piece of shit. I'm serious. Like, it's become a popularity contest of who, it's almost prostitution. They're begging for money. And it's fucking sick. It's gross. And I think that's part of the reason you have some of the elected officials that we do, that they're so comfortable being a sellout that they're they made a career out of it. And but I'm not. I get, that's just, like I said, that shit makes me cringe.
Yeah, I mean, Congress is broken, right? Like you said it. Like they're not doing their job. It's become. I remember when we were kids, right? Like we all thought that Bush was an idiot, and I would give anything to bring that man back at this point. Because at least
Oh my.
back then, like we were getting things done. yeah, like he had some flubs, but we were able to like pass legislation that was good for most people.
Yeah.
But now we're in a deadlock, which is I'm a caveat because it was one of the other things what you said, and it's part of your platform, and I find it interesting. So I'm a constitutional conservative. I am a firm believer in our Constitution as it's written. But I also believe in the amendment process. I think that it is important and that our founding document was intended to be modernized as our nation modernized, and we did not do that well at all. And so we are now extremely behind on modernizing our founding documents and how this country should function. One of the things I saw on your platform is some constitutional amendments. And so you talk about term limits as one of your platforms. And most people don't understand the only way to do this is through a constitutional amendment. And
Yep.
so, if you're elected, do you plan on introducing a constitutional amendment for term limits? And any other ones do you plan on introducing? Can you go through those with us?
Yeah, 100%. And this is all rooted in the fact that you have to go to the extent of a constitutional amendment because something written in law can be untangled or watered down and basically completely eradicated over time. So this is all at the root of trying to root out corruption in the political system. So term limits. This is something that I don't think a lot of Americans maybe fully understand is, Article 1 of the Constitution established Congress. Article 2, the presidency, and Article 3, the Supreme Court. So clearly our founders had an emphasis on Congress being important, right, as a co-equal branch, but there's a reason I think it was first, right, and not the sort of sole executive, even though when a lot of people think of America and power, they think of the president, but really, I think the power is supposed to be in Congress. So you've got three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. But we've only have term limits on the executive, right? So the vast majority of Americans already here. I think 80 to 90% support term limits. But I want to go beyond term limits for Congress of, I think, 12 years is the max. That's 2 Senate terms or 6 House terms. But I think that the Supreme Court needs to move to a rotational bench. And that way, in both, you've got the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court that's getting new voices, new people from different walks of life coming in, instead of this, what we have now, which is, people that stay in office for 20, 30, 40 years. Nobody can unseat them because the districts are so gerrymandered. And so term limits is a way to try to prevent corruption. Again, if we were able to pass an amendment to put term limits on the president, then we should be able to do that for Congress and the Supreme Court. And so the other amendments, gerrymandering, I think, needs to be right there with it because that's another tool that is used. It's just so fucking blatant, like gerrymandering is literally rigging the game. It's literally cheating. It's blatant. I don't even understand why the parties are just so open about it, because it is such a spit in the fucking face to democracy for politicians to draw the lines and pick the voters when it's supposed to be the voters picking the politicians. So you need to completely make that illegal and turn that into a third-party independent commission. And so, again, term limits, gerrymandering, those are two pillars of the corruption. And then the last piece is which might be the biggest, especially recently, is Citizens United, the dark money, the 2010 Supreme Court decision that allowed corporations to be people and money as free speech, which is just some. I've never seen a company have a baby or go through a divorce or, have a domestic, abuse. Right? Like, so this, we need again to reverse that decision, find a way to permanently. And again, I don't have all the answers here, but I do think that removing corporate money from the political process is a good place to start. Now, do you go completely to public financing? I don't know. But I am for reform of the political system as it is now, because it's a two-party stranglehold, and there's lots of tools that the parties have at their disposal to prevent ballot access, to carve up districts, to pool money continuously from dark places, and fund the candidates that they want, right? So, yeah, it took me like, there's a lot of policy things that I would like to do, but those are at the heart of fundamentally shifting where our country is headed, because those aren't partisan issues. Those are ethical, again, and moral sort of guidelines that should prevent corruption from, coming back into the system, right? And so unless you go that far to make it, the land, the law, the land, again, I feel like things could be repealed, taken down years later, or legislation walked back, and then you get back to the same point, and that sucks. America, we suck at learning from the past. This is a new issue with campaign finance, but man, we've seen. Actually, I don't want to say this is, well, it's new for the generations alive, right? America's gone through this, where the Gilded Age, the 1920s, you had Rockefeller and all those J.P. Morgan people that had so much money. They were basically oligarchs controlling the country, and we're right back to that now. So that's the only time. Like, if you look at the wealth equality statistics or data, the amount of wealth owned by so few, that's the only comparison in American history is the sort of Great Depression era. So, yeah, so we've been there before. Like I said, we've passed legislation. Yeah, we've done it before. We just need to do it again. It just sucks that when politics gets boring over 40, 50 years, I think stuff like this happens behind closed doors. Things get watered down. Stuff gets done for, hey, let's drive the economy, and let's let these mergers and acquisitions go through, even though it harms competition. And hey, let's send these jobs overseas because we can make a little bit more money. Yeah.
Yeah, I think corruption in politics is one of our biggest problems as a country. I know one of the hot topics that our group has discussed in our chats and kind of in public is APAC money. And PAC money in general, like when it's not from like unions and, like good PACs. Are you going to accept APAC money at all?
So I pledge not to take any PAC money, any corporate money, basically anything that's not a small dollar donation. So yeah, APAC would be the last people in the world that I would take money from. They're
Do you
nothing but foreign.
do you think that they should register as a foreign?
Yeah, they are. They are foreign influence peddlers. I mean, it's to me it's wide out in the open. But yeah, again, that's just another form of foreign money, foreign influence, or just dark money into our elections. So I'm personally very much against taking corporate or PAC money, but yeah, this is this like cesspool or Pandora's box that's been open since Citizens United is groups like this. You know, you can call yourself we're the Happy Sunshine Puppy Foundation, but all your money could be coming from, you know, the oil and meatpacking industry, and you know, it's like it's just you know, so much is, I don't know, there's so much of that dark money through like you said, APAC and other big organizations that they're just buying influence, in my opinion.
And
Yeah.
generally they just turn people into like horrible human beings, right? So Randy Fine has been in the news again, and he's from Florida, unfortunately. And you know, if you follow Randy Fine's career, right, he was not such an awful human being at one point during his political career. But then something very interesting happened, and Randy Fine went on this like trip to Israel, and then he was sponsoring bills for Florida to buy the most war bonds from Israel out of any state in the country. And yeah, so it's just like the influence, like you said, is just like so out in the open that it's not like we can't ignore it anymore as a populace, right? Is you said it in the beginning of this, is it's more of a top versus bottom issue. And
Yeah.
when you see the corruption is so blatant within corporations, their lobbyists, special interest groups, their lobbyists, whether it be APAC or corporate PAC money, yeah, like it's just the voter and the foundation of our country. This is not what it was about, right? Like the Constitution was not written for this specifically. Um,
I'm actually writing. I haven't published it yet, but I'm drafting it right now on my website about. I like the title I wrote was "Are Lobbyists the Enemy of the People?" Because I think there's 13 lobbyists for every member of Congress, and they spend about $400 billion a year. 400 billion on the lobbying, corporate lobbying industry. Are you like, that is fucking wild. And yeah, like that shit should be completely banned. Yeah, it's just it's such a gross misuse of what our democracy is supposed to be, right? So yeah, we need to, and that's why I've been so hard on some of those corruption issues, because I think if you can take care of some of those, you can actually hold motherfuckers' feet to the fire when they are in office. And guess what? If they don't go in there and do what the fuck they said they were going to do, guess what? You know, they're not so safely drawn into a district that they can't be challenged, right? And yeah, it's just, as we both know, there's lots of issues. Lots of issues.
I feel it. You know, the corruption is something that I worry about, right? My representative is not sensational. Like he just doesn't do his job, right? Like he just doesn't write pieces of legislation, and he sits on the Doge committee, and he has his own issues. Um,
Yeah.
but I hope he loses. But no, I mean we as a country, I think you said it earlier, and I was like, you know, I don't think that we're sliding towards fascism. I think that we're there. Like, because if you look at the tenets and you follow like the actual things of fascism, but I do think, and we talked about this like right before we started about elections, right? And I've seen a lot of videos going around about, toxic positivity, thinking that you can vote yourself out of fascism. Um, yeah, like, and I was like, ooh, true. But yeah, like it is voting people in that have the good moral and ethical, lines in the sand, right? And I appreciate your candor tonight about that, is that we have to get it out. We have to balance the budget as a civilized society, start using our funding for education, healthcare, um, because a healthy society is a better society, an educated society is a better society, and then we all live better. And so when we have politicians that are bought by corporations that don't want that to happen, we're going to continue in this cycle.
100%. Yeah, I was just, yeah, I want to live in a nation where, if it unfortunately happens to where, I become homeless or I need help, right? Like that we take care of those who need it most. But and right now we're not really living up to those sort of moral and ethical ideals that I think that a lot of us do want. Um, and we just got to keep fighting for it and refusing to accept this sort of status quo. So yeah, um, you're right. The most recent article I did publish was titled "Resisting Fascism." So I know we're there. I got you. And that's why, sort of tying it back to democracy, not being a spectator sport. I want to just thank you for what you guys are doing, which is, helping, inform voters. You're helping, bring light to issues. Uh, you're doing, a grand net positive for democracy. So that's all I can ask for is that more folks find a way to get involved. Um, Clearly not everyone's going to run for office. I don't necessarily encourage that, but right, county commissions, school boards, volunteering for a campaign, um, create, content creation. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get your voice out there. Um, yeah, and I think if we get so loud that they can't ignore us, right? And so, yeah, if I can get there, I'm gonna be losing my voice because I'm gonna be screaming so damn loud for change. So,
Especially
yeah,
with
I'm optimistic.
our own community, right? Like within our own veteran community, we need to do better about speaking out.
Yeah, and God, what's so crazy is that the veteran community is one of the best things that our nation has, and it's so sad that more of our nation doesn't have it. That shared fabric from different walks of life, and what I call it popping the bubble of where you grew up, where you're sort of indoctrinated into. When you join the military, that gets popped, and you have to sort of see things differently, or evolve your way of understanding what it means to be, part of America, whatever. And that's what I wish more civilians had, is that experience to sometimes go through shared misery with others, which forms bonds, right? Which is what military is sometimes about. but seeing that shared fabric between a community in California or in North Carolina or Florida or New York, right? Like that we actually are really tied together. So we do need to care about what happens. Because if it's happening to just one, it's probably happening to more. And yeah, but I think, we're, like I said, we're finding tools. I think that the protests are a huge way to show that the public sentiment has changed in recent, definitely over the past, 14, 16 months, right? So yeah, we just got to keep up the good fight.
Absolutely. I agree. Last question, and then we're going to close out. And we close out in a way that you are going to recognize and you're going to probably get enrolled. The last question we ask, I think, is one of the most important ones we ask, right? And you'll know why as soon as I ask it. If elected, how are you going to stay grounded to your constituents?
I want to try to be as open and accessible. I've tried to take great pride in responding to every email personally that comes in. From people that want to volunteer, get involved with the campaign. So town halls, when I'm here, but just open communication with constituents, I think is a way to have openness and transparency. And again, like my whole reason for being there is to do like what's best for the people that I'm trying to represent. And so like I'll always, I'm going to carry maybe a personal sentiment into things, but if that's not where the constituents are, then I need to, you know what I'm saying? Like I need to bridge that gap. But from a lot of what I've been hearing from folks is that they do like that I'm sort of bold enough to come outside of the box with things and say, let's fucking swing for the fences here. Let's try some bold change. Instead of kicking the can down the road or saying, oh, that's unattainable. So I don't. The only thing that's going to prevent us is our our willpower or lack of imagination, creativity. So, I want to be as open and transparent as humanly possible because I think that's what people want. Authenticity. They want to see, I think, working class representation. Someone who understands what the fuck it's like to, worry about, meeting the next mortgage payment and shit like that, and grocery bills and all that good stuff, right? Like, and that's the story of my fucking life. Like, I've lived affordability issues. So, hopefully all those things, my service, working class background, my advocacy for anti-corruption issues and willingness to say, hey, both of these fucking parties are corrupt, but I got to choose one because you got to kind of play the game to change it. I'd love to see independents have nationwide ballot access, but until then, I'm going to try to unfucking decorrupt the Democratic Party as best I can. But yeah, so like I said, not like I said, but my website, I've laid as much as humanly possible out there on where I am, what I'll advocate and fight for. Like, so when you compare that to Roy Cooper, who's raised, I don't know, 15, 20 million, but he's got not a single fucking policy stance on his website. That to me is suspect. And so I just, my biggest ask is for that folks actually take the time to research candidates, because if it's purely off of name recognition, Roy Cooper's going to whoop my ass because he is the former governor of the state. I get that. But if you go off policies, none of which he's laid out. I mean, he's in my opinion status quo dem, and I'm anti-establishment, anti-status quo. And so, yeah, hopefully the people have a choice. And but again, to me, the fight's only getting started. You know, I'm just turned 41, so if we continue to have elections, I'm going to keep fighting for fucking, you know, positive change, because I've got, you know, like I said, 4 children and hopefully one day grandchildren. Right? I want to see generations of Americans have a better, you know, inherit something better than what we got now. So
I agree. I have 2 small daughters, so I understand it from a parent standpoint as well. Before we finish out, tell us how to get involved, where do we donate, your next event, how to contact you, things of that nature.
yeah, sure. So really pretty easy. We're kind of past a lot of the events, and I had to take down all the social media for employment issues. So all I've got is basically my website, justicewithdues.org. And again, there is a donate link on there, but I'm not really asking folks to donate as much as I am asking them to just talk to some folks, friends and family, and not even advocate for me. Just say, hey, are you voting in the primary? Have you researched candidates? So I can encourage them to participate, because typically, I think North Carolina's turnout was 18 to 19% for primary. That's fucking sad. So if we can get more people to show up, participate in who makes it to the general election, again, that's an informed and engaged democracy, republic, you know, representative democracy, whatever you want to call it. So that's, you know, the website. You know, if you feel like I'm the person that's going to advocate for the things that you want, then yeah, there's early voting now till March 3rd, and March 3rd is election day. And yeah, that'll finalize the primary and whittle us down from 7 Democratic candidates to, assuming 1, unless there's no clear winner and there might be a runoff. So we'll see. But yeah, I think yeah, just I think just again, it's not spectator sport. Research the candidates, and take the time to kind of engage at that level. I think that's a start.
I like it. Well, we thank you for coming on, and we are going to close out in our normal fashion for those watching. In the military, every Friday at close of business, our commanding officer, first sergeant, gives us a safety brief and basically gives us a rundown of how not to be a degenerate over the weekend. So we do that every time we close out to remind our veteran group how not to be degenerates until we see you next. So we always start off the same. Do not beat your spouse, partner, dog, cat, animal, or child. Drink water. Make sure that you are eating normal meals. Take all your medicine and go to your appointments. Make sure that you reach out before you crash out. Make sure that you change your socks. Make sure that you keep your animals leashed so that they don't kill other people's animals. Also, do not buy zoo animals off the dark web and then try to donate them to the zoo. Do not conduct live fire exercises in housing developments. Protect those around you. We took an oath to the Constitution, and that included the people around us. So if you are out at actions, protect the most vulnerable. Rory, did I miss any?
Don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive. If you do drink and you need to get somewhere, message the page. One of us board members, we will get
we
you a
will pick up
ride.
your Uber.
And I think one of my not fondest memories, but one of my sergeants, I think it was don't smoke no bowl, don't suck no pull, and don't be an asshole was his, safety brief. So, so, no,
Um,
you guys covered a lot more there, which is, taking care of each other. Our community looks out for one another and advocates. So, yeah, we got to continue to do that and set a good example for others.
Yeah.
Self-care is a form of protest.
Yes, go out and
Yeah.
touch grass. Don't live in the activism community 24/7. Don't add or subtract from the population unless you intend to. And if you intend to, have plans for both of those.
Unless you just like living on the edge, and then
Roll the dice.
yeah,
Roll the dice.
choose your own adventure.
Life isn't a yeah.
It is, but no, it has been great having you, and I do wish you all the best in your campaign, and we will be watching because Rory lives in North Carolina. We are connected to the Fayetteville Resistance Coalition up there, and I have personal friends in Fayetteville, so
Awesome.
I thank you for coming on and giving us your time. And, we hope to see you. And let us know when you're back on social media because we can always repost your stuffs.
Yeah.
100%. Thank you guys for having me. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I'll definitely try to stay in touch. Yeah, and hopefully we can chat again.
You're welcome in our group. You're a vet. So we'll reach out through email and get you into our group so that you can see what's going on around the country.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right. Having a good night, guys.
All right. You guys too. See ya.